right alone, son.
There's a strange feeling surrounding this next episode, and it's hard to ignore. It's not just about what's coming, it's about what hasn't happened yet. The last episode gave us moments, tension, character beats, but it didn't really move the story forward in a big way. And normally, that would be fine. But right now? With the end so close, it feels risky. Because there's no more room left for slow pacing. No more room for hesitation. Episode 6 has to deliver, and not just in small ways. It needs to completely shift the direction of everything. And that's exactly why this episode feels dangerous. Because when a story holds back for too long, the release is never small. It's explosive. And all signs are pointing towards something massive happening here. Not just one big moment, but multiple threads colliding at the same time. You've got Butcher and his desperation growing stronger. You've got Homelander slowly losing control of himself. You've got Soldier Boy standing right in the middle, still unpredictable, still unreadable. And then, there's Bombsite. Because let's be honest, Bombsite isn't just another character being introduced. He feels important. Not just because of the V1 running through his system, but because of what he represents. Power. Instability. And most importantly, a turning point. Whoever gets to him first doesn't just gain an advantage, they shift the entire balance of the endgame. And that's what makes this next episode feel like a race. Not a slow build, but a collision course. You can almost picture it already. Multiple sides moving at once, all heading toward the same target. Butcher and his crew, desperate to secure the V1 and finally gain the upper hand. Homelander, possibly already aware of its importance, moving with that quiet intensity that always leads to something terrifying. And Soldier Boy, standing somewhere in between, still not fully committed to either side. That uncertainty alone makes everything more unpredictable. Because the moment he chooses a side, everything changes. And what makes it even more intense is the lack of time. There are only a few episodes left to wrap this entire story up. That means episode 6 can't afford to hold anything back. It needs to set the stage for the final chaos. The kind of chaos where decisions have consequences, where alliances break, and where characters don't get second chances anymore. This is where things stop being theoretical, and start becoming real. At the same time, there's this underlying tension that hasn't fully exploded yet. You can feel it in Homelander's behavior, in the way he's been reacting to everything around him. He's not stable. Not even close. And the more pressure that builds, the more dangerous he becomes. If episode 6 pushes him even slightly over the edge, we're not just talking about a few violent moments. We're talking about something much bigger. Something that affects everyone. And that's really what this episode is setting up. Not just action, not just reveals, but consequences. The kind that carry into the final episodes and shape how everything ends. Because once certain lines are crossed, there's no going back. And it feels like episode 6 is where those lines finally disappear. Everything is pointing towards a shift. A moment where the story stops asking questions and starts giving answers. But those answers aren't going to come easily. They're going to come through conflict, through loss, through chaos. And that's what makes this so exciting, and so worrying at the same time. Because if this episode really is the turning point, then not everyone is making it out the same. Bombsite, this is where things start to get serious. Because up until now, the idea of the V1 has been dangerous, but distant. It's been something people are talking about, something they're chasing, but not something that's actually in play yet. And the moment Bombsite enters the story properly, that changes. Instantly. Because now, the power isn't theoretical anymore. It's real. It's active. And it's sitting inside someone who may not be willing to give it up without a fight. We don't know everything about Bombsite yet, but we know enough to understand how big of a threat he could be. He's from that earlier era, tied to Soldier Boy, which already tells you something about the kind of presence he's going to have. These aren't the newer heroes who care about image or approval. These are the ones who were built in a completely different time, with a completely different mindset. And if he's been living with V1 in his system this whole time, then that likely means one thing: he knows exactly how powerful he is. And that's what makes him dangerous. Because power in this world never comes quietly. It always comes with ego, with confidence, sometimes even with arrogance. And if Bombsite believes he's untouchable, then there's no reason for him to cooperate with anyone. Not Butcher. Not Homelander. Not anyone. Which means this isn't going to be a simple exchange or negotiation, it's going to be a confrontation. At the same time, his abilities are still a mystery, but his name alone gives us a strong hint. Bombsite doesn't sound subtle. It doesn't sound controlled. It sounds destructive. Explosive. The kind of power that doesn't just take out one target, but everything around it. And if that's the case, then any encounter with him is going to come with serious risk. Because it's not just about defeating him, it's about surviving whatever chaos he unleashes in the process. Now imagine all of this happening while multiple sides are closing in at the same time. That's where things start to feel overwhelming, in a good way. Because this isn't just one group facing Bombsite. It's potentially everyone arriving at once. Butcher and the crew trying to secure the V1 for themselves. Homelander stepping in, possibly seeing this as his chance to eliminate the one thing that could threaten him, or even take it for himself. And then Soldier Boy, who already has history with Bombsite, possibly complicating things even further. That kind of setup doesn't lead to a clean outcome. It leads to chaos. The kind where alliances don't matter, plans fall apart instantly, and everything turns into survival. And this is exactly the kind of moment the story needs right now. Something unpredictable. Something explosive. Something that reminds you just how dangerous this world really is. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Because the V1 isn't just a weapon, it's a decision. Whoever ends up with it has to choose what to do next. Do they use it? Do they destroy it? Do they keep it as leverage? And each of those choices leads to a completely different outcome. If Butcher gets it, there's a strong chance he tries to follow through with his plan, but even that isn't guaranteed. Because Butcher isn't exactly known for playing things safe. If Homelander gets it, though, that's where things start to feel terrifying. Because if Homelander realizes that he can remove the one thing that threatens his life, or even evolve beyond it, then there's nothing holding him back anymore. No fear. No hesitation. And that's when he becomes something else entirely. Not just dangerous, but unstoppable. And the scariest part is, episode 6 feels like the moment where that possibility becomes real. Where the V1 finally leaves the shadows and enters the main story. Where Bombsite becomes more than just a name, and turns into the center of everything. Because once this confrontation begins, there's no slowing it down. Homelander, this is where everything starts to feel unstable. Because up until now, he's been holding on. Not completely in control, not calm, but holding on just enough to keep everything from collapsing around him. But the closer we get to this next episode, the more it feels like that control is slipping. And not slowly, but all at once. There's been something building inside him for a while now. Ever since the idea of the virus was introduced, ever since he realized that he wasn't as untouchable as he thought, something changed. For the first time, Homelander had to face something he's never truly dealt with before: fear. Not fear of losing power, not fear of being exposed, but fear of actually dying. And that kind of fear doesn't just go away. It sits there, growing, twisting everything around it. Now imagine what happens if that fear suddenly disappears. If the one thing that could kill him is no longer a threat. Whether that's because he gets the V1, or because it's destroyed, either way, the result could be the same. Because once that fear is gone, there's nothing left to hold him back. No limits. No reason to pretend. No reason to care about consequences anymore. And that's what makes episode 6 feel so dangerous. Because it feels like the moment where Homelander finally crosses that line. The line where he stops pretending to be a hero. And fully embraces what he actually is. We've seen glimpses of it before. Small moments where he lets that darkness show. But this time? It won't be small. It'll be constant. You can already sense it in the way he's been acting. The way he looks at people. The way he reacts when things don't go his way. There's less patience now. Less restraint. And more anger. Not loud anger, but quiet, controlled anger. The kind that builds until it explodes without warning. And when it does, it's never contained. If he gets pushed in this next episode, even slightly, there's a strong chance we see him go further than he ever has before. Not just targeting enemies, but anyone. Anyone who questions him. Anyone who stands in his way. Anyone who simply exists in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because once Homelander decides that he doesn't need approval anymore, the rules change. And then there's the idea of him seeing himself as something more. Not just a leader. But something above everyone else. That mindset has always been there, just beneath the surface. But now, it feels closer than ever to becoming real. If the situation with the V1 pushes him in that direction, we could see him fully embrace that identity. Not as a symbol, but as a belief. That's where things start to get terrifying. Because a Homelander who believes he's untouchable is one thing. But a Homelander who believes he's right, no matter what he does, is something else entirely. That's not just power. That's justification. And once he has that, there's no reasoning with him anymore. It also raises questions about the people around him. Because staying close to Homelander has always been dangerous, but now it feels almost impossible. Characters like Sister Sage, Ashley, The Deep, even Black Noir, they've all managed to survive by staying in line. By knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet. But if Homelander becomes more unpredictable, that strategy might not work anymore. At some point, fear turns into survival. And survival means making choices. Do they stay and risk everything, or do they try to get out while they still can? Because if Homelander starts to spiral, there won't be any warning. No build-up. Just sudden, irreversible decisions. And that's really what episode 6 feels like for him. Not just another step in his story, but the moment where everything shifts. Where the version of Homelander we've been watching starts to disappear. And something far more dangerous takes his place. Because once he breaks, there's no putting him back together. Frenchie and Kimiko, this is where things start to hurt a little more. Because while everything else in the story is building towards chaos, destruction, and power, their story feels different. It feels quieter. More personal. But that doesn't make it any less intense. In fact, it might be the most emotional breaking point we see in this episode. Their relationship has been slowly drifting for a while now, and it hasn't been loud or dramatic. It's been